right? And the last speaker of the day is a gentleman named Nils Smith. He's the chief strategist for social media and innovation for Dunham & Company. He's the author of a couple books called The Social Media and Crypto for Good.
All right. Can you guys hear me? I'm Nils Smith. I'm joining you from New York City. And this last session really was exciting to hear from Tim. Tim is a hero in kind of the faith tech world. The things that he's created are incredible. I have two daughters that I'm raising in the city, an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old. And hearing him talk just reminds me of how excited I am as a dad for my kids of what they get to do, the privilege and the honor that they get to create from scratch. And when I was growing up, when I was 8 and 11 years old, and when I was 16, 17 years old, I could build a fort. And my 11-year-old daughter now, 3 years ago, she built an Alexa skill called Kid Jokes, and she would create jokes that she would put out there, and kids all over the country would listen to her jokes. And just recently, she built a video game on Roblox. She's 11 years old. And that's what she's building as an 11-year-old. My other daughter right now, she came to me about 3 months ago with an idea to build a face mask with Bluetooth built into it so people could make phone calls without taking off their face mask. So we're sourcing that, designing that, and creating it. The possibilities today and the possibilities that you have to not wait until you're 30 to build something that today you could go home this afternoon and create an app, build a website, make a video. You have the privilege of really utilizing these technologies for good in such a fascinating way. And so I get so excited for you. I'm not here to talk about apps though. I'm here to talk about cryptocurrency. So I work for a company called Dunham & Company. I'm gonna shout out to Jarrett Dunham, wherever he is in the room. And we help, and Danielle is a colleague of mine, and we help Christian ministries around fundraising and marketing. And my role as chief strategist of social media and innovation is to help run ahead of these ministries. And so I'm working with some forward technologies like live streaming and early social media adoption and virtual reality. And one of the new technologies is blockchain technology and cryptocurrency and how that affects nonprofits. And what I want to talk about today is how that affects you. So I'm curious for those in the room, how many of you have Bitcoin or have ever used Bitcoin? Okay, a couple. How many have heard of Bitcoin? Okay, so we've heard of it. How many would say they know what Bitcoin is? Okay, a few. Very good. I also want to the camera here. I'm a graduate of Second Baptist Houston, so all my Eagle friends out there, I'm glad that you guys are here as well and joining us. But Bitcoin is essentially the beginning of what I believe is the future of money in cryptocurrency and what that looks like as we think about where's money going. And I think as we begin to think about where money might be going, and at the core of what cryptocurrency is, and I'll just get to what it is, it's digital money. It's just digital money. And logically, it should make sense that everything in our world is digitizing for the most part. And even in this season, we've seen church digitized in how we use technology in the digital world to engage and connect. And Zoom has allowed us from a digital meetings. So it makes sense if we think about money being digitized, and cryptocurrency is money digitized. But to understand what cryptocurrency is, I think starts with understanding what money is. So this is a US dollar. How much is this US dollar worth? It's $1, right? Do you ever think about why? And what is $1? What does that mean? It's 100 pennies, it's 4 quarters. It can buy a bottle of water. But why is this piece of paper worth a bottle of water? We just kind of agree that it's worth a bottle of water. And if I had 100 of these, I could buy another pair of boots. It's currency, so we give it value for the exchange of goods and services. So we've decided that this paper has a shared value that we can use for exchange. So if you think about where money came from, is, many years ago, and we actually see money in the Bible. If you remember, Judas, exchanged money for Jesus. But money has been used for exchange of early days. You would do work for somebody and they would give you goats, and you would take those goats and you would exchange them for carrots, and you would keep one goat and you would use things to exchange, and that's how you got different things. And one goat was worth 200 carrots, and you would have these kind of shared exchanges. But then over time, people said, well, if I could just give you like 4 rocks instead of the carrots, because I don't need these right now, and this will represent this much value. And then we started creating coins, and they would represent value so that we could exchange easier. And then over time, we were able to have banks, and we can use checkbooks, and we could write checks to exchange value instead of having a big pile of paper. And so at the end of the day, money is agreed upon value for exchange. So I think we've got to think about then, what is this? Why is this what we all agree upon? And the reality is in Mexico, it's a peso. In Europe, it's a euro. In the Philippines, it's a Filipino peso. And Australia, they have their Australian dollar. And so there are different currencies that have different values, and you can exchange them for each other, but we just agree for whatever reason that this is valuable. But at the end of the day, it's paper. This really doesn't have a whole lot of value. And as we get into cryptocurrency, the foundation of cryptocurrency was to create a digital money. So even on your dollar, it has a number on here that can be tracked, and every dollar has a unique number, so it's exchanged. But can we really track where every single one of these dollars goes and how it gets there? And so from a function standpoint, this is a very dated system to just say at the bottom of all of our exchange is a bunch of paper with certain numbers on them. And so moving to a digital currency allows tracking and more natural exchange, because we actually have digitized most of the exchange that happens through physical dollars. But the reality is it's still physical dollars. And so I think as you begin to go down that mindset, it's helpful to understand why digital money makes sense. And I think why it hasn't happened up until now is because technology wasn't ready. But there's a technology that was created with Bitcoin called blockchain technology. And I don't want to go into all the details of blockchain technology, but blockchain technology is one of the things that I believe is going to shape every sector in many ways, and it's starting with money. And blockchain technology creates a ledger system, and if that's the way banks work. If every time money is exchanged where banks are involved, they ledger. You see that in your bank statements of you got this money, or somebody gave you this money, and the money went from this account to that account. And that's essentially what cryptocurrency does, but it starts and ends as a digital coin or digitized money. There is no paper at the bottom of it, and so every exchange can then be tracked on the blockchain. Now, the blockchain is also stored in a different way, in that it's stored across every device that's connected to the blockchain. So currently, the way the internet works is you have your device, and your device connects to a server to get that information. So it's one-to-one, where the blockchain your device connects to the whole set of devices that are connected to the blockchain, and every transaction is processed on all of those devices, which allows for greater scale and stability, so that right now you'll hear about hacks, where a server goes down and now all of a sudden we don't have Facebook anymore, or everybody's information from Target was hacked. Well, the blockchain combined with a technology called cryptography gives us the technology advancement for security and scale so that we can now have digital money. And so the practical aspect of this is, how do we move from this to that? And I think that's what we have to begin to understand. And maybe it's not going to be Bitcoin, and maybe it's not even going to be cryptocurrency, but it's my core belief that it's just natural that this is dated. This is a dated system, and that we must naturally be moving towards digital money in one way or another. And I think it's important for us to to be thinking about that and not just like a lot of other technologies of like, no, that's not really like, this is money. Well, things are always progressing, and money, like everything else, is going to progress and it's going to change, and we need to figure out and stay ahead of that. So one of the things that's interesting out there, and people ask me, where did Bitcoin come from? Where did Ethereum, where did Litecoin, where did all of these cryptocurrencies come from? Well, somebody just made them. I think this is the kind of weird side of cryptocurrency is Bitcoin was created by a person named Satoshi Nakamoto. The reality is that's not a real person. We don't know who created Bitcoin. So the most popular cryptocurrency today, one Bitcoin is actually worth $15,000 today, and there's millions of Bitcoins out there, was created by a fictional person. And so someone was able to just create a new money that's used all over the world. In Nigeria, it's actually a more common to use Bitcoin for exchange than it is to use their dollar. And so this is real money that people are using and they're exchanging for goods and for services. And we don't know where it came from. We just know that it is and that it lives on the Bitcoin blockchain. And then you have other cryptocurrencies that are created for different purposes. There's a cryptocurrency out there from Charity Water, which is a nonprofit, and somebody created it in order to people use that coin, and it creates new coins to go towards water wells, and so they're doing good with their cryptocurrency, and so it's interesting the way some of these cryptocurrencies are created. But at the end of the day, anyone can create new money. And I think about when I was a kid, I think you probably did this as well, is I would just get construction paper and cut it up, and I could put an amount that this is $1,000 in my new money system. But it wasn't worth $1,000 unless people would exchange based on that rate. And that's what's happening in the world of cryptocurrency, and that's what's happened with Bitcoin and continues to happen is people are exchanging and they're agreeing on the value, and so that value begins to increase as it's a more trusted source of exchange. And so that's where money seems to be going, but it's hard to understand why and what that means of, are we really going to be dependent on, from a money standpoint, is this dollar gonna go away? So are all of our dollars going to be worthless? And is this money that we don't even know where it came from really gonna be foundational for how we have money and pay for homes and food and cars and all of our needs? Well, one of the reasons why we're in this position is anybody can create it. And I think this creates a lot of problems when anybody can create money and then it's there. There's no control, there's no systems, there's no regulation. They created it, and if we agree to it, then it's essentially its own government. And then each coin has a unique purpose. And some of those purposes, like the Charity Water coin, are good, and some of them are not. Now, I want to share a few good things that I've learned. So for the last 4 years, I've gone down this path of really diving deep into cryptocurrency. A friend of mine actually, we were having dinner about 4 years ago, and he said, have you heard of this Ethereum cryptocurrency thing? And I said, I've heard it. Is that like Bitcoin? And he said, yeah, I had a friend told me, put $500 into it, 2 years ago, and I forgot about it. And then I saw it on the news and looked it up and went and found it. And turns out my $500 was now worth $500,000. And he's like, no, that can't be. And so he exchanged half of it for US dollars, and it was worth $250,000. And he kept the rest in there. And even that what was left turned into $1.2 million from an exchange rate. And we have seen this explosion over the last few years of the value of some of these coins as people have embraced them, where they're going. And so there's some real advantages to this money, and I think there's some real concerns that we've got to be aware of. One of the big advantages is security and identity theft. So as we think about the blockchain technology and where that is moving and where that's taking us, it's really going to allow for significant security in the future, where all of these hacks, there's people that literally their job, or just as there were robbers or burglars in the past, there's people that are burglars for the internet, and they're breaking into banks digitally. I went to USAA, which is a big bank based in San Antonio, and they had a cybersecurity room, and they took me to this back room. I had to go through all this scanning to get back there, and it was a dark room with about 20 people and screens everywhere, like you'd see in the movies, and they literally are fighting hackers all day long. And it's this digital war. And that's what's happening. This blockchain technology is actually going to create more efficiency and stability from this server-based hosted, data and storage of money, and even vaults. Like we just have a bunch of vaults with paper to back end our money, but as it's digitized, it'll be a lot more secure, and it will, because of the anonymity of cryptocurrency, it will minimize identity theft, and that we're seeing quite a bit today. The second is speed. The speed of exchange will become much faster. Now, this is not necessarily if you were to just go to a convenience store today and buy something with Bitcoin. It's actually slower because it has to go across the blockchain. But this is if you were to send money overseas. Today, I'd have to go to Western Union, and I'd have to get it kind of set up and give them money and pay them money to send money, and they'd have to go to a Western Union where they are and get the money and exchange the money. And it's complicated today to send money outside of the United States. But cryptocurrency, I can do it instantly. And there's no fees. I don't have to go through Western Union. The blockchain is securing it. The blockchain is creating the efficiency. And so as we begin to think about the globalization of our economies, cryptocurrency opens up a lot of unique opportunities to the speed that it gives us for exchange. The third is universal access. Right now, it's hard outside of the United States to get a US dollar and figure out how do we have exchange. A lot of actually other currencies, they store US dollars to give their own currency stability. The economies are really complicated and confusing, but it's gonna be interesting with cryptocurrency where it's not held in one place. Now, I actually am of the belief that governments will start creating cryptocurrencies as a second form of currency, but that's just a guess. We really don't know where this is going, but it's going to create opportunities globally for everyone to have access to these currencies for stability and exchange. And this is really challenging for those in other countries where their dollar, and you've maybe seen this on the news, of countries where their dollar becomes worth nothing. And so they might have saved, and they might have been smart and saved money, but if their dollar becomes worth nothing, then they've saved for nothing. And so having a stable currency globally can be beneficial to those all over the world. The fourth is minimal to no fees. Right now, we have to, if you buy something at a store with a credit card, you're paying 3.5%, or they are paying 3.5% in just transactions. Well, because of the efficiency of blockchain technology, it will be probably fractions of a penny to make any kind of exchange on a blockchain. And so it will become much more efficient, and that savings will go back into the end consumer's hands. And so it's essentially you're taking a tax off of the money. Now it creates complications because jobs will be lost because this blockchain technology will replace many jobs that exist today. And then the fifth thing is transparency. Transparency. And so as I shared with the US dollar, we have numbers that we can kind of track it if it ever gets back to a tracking system. But this can be exchanged 10 times before it ever gets to another tracking system. And so we really can't track this physical money. It could go anywhere. And you see it on TV if they have bags of money. People go rob a bank and they take a bag of money. With cryptocurrency, there's not the security and the transparency of every transaction is on the blockchain. So you can see every time money is exchanged through that cryptocurrency. Now, there's some anonymity to what it is, and you don't know exactly who it was, but you can see that exchange on that ledger. And so it will be interesting as we have more transparency in those transactions. I think it's so early in this day of cryptocurrency, though, to really know where this is going. And as I say, it's the future of money. I don't mean that it's going to be the future of money in the next 2 or 3 years. I think we've seen it develop a ton over the last 5 years. But I do think, 10 years from now, I think we're going to look back and kind of think, remember when we had paper money and it was all paper, and we used to go to the store and buy paper. And now that we all have these devices and can use these devices, it's just most natural. And I think this transition to things like Apple Pay and Google Pay are making everything we do digitized. We rarely actually even carry physical fiat currency around with us, but we do have, we are still using this form of money as our primary currency for exchange. And so it's going to be interesting of what does a transition look like into this new world of cryptocurrency. And so I want to share a few predictions of where I think this is going and these are opinions, to be clear, and to look at where we might even position ourselves to be ready for where this technology is going. The first is that there will be more. While there are thousands of cryptocurrencies already created, I think there are going to be thousands more, because you can tonight go create your own money. I would actually encourage somebody here to try. Go figure out, what does it look like to go and create my own money? It doesn't mean it's going to be worth anything, but you can literally go create your own currency tonight and give it a name and begin to create a system for how that money will be distributed. You basically create your own rules for your money and the distribution of that money. So I think there's going to be a lot more currencies out there. The second is, I think regulation is coming. One of the challenges we deal with today when it comes to cryptocurrency is the government doesn't know what to do with it. The government can't control this at this point because they don't even know who created it. And that's a significant problem. But as the governments and governments globally begin to understand cryptocurrency more, there's going to be regulation. As regulation comes, it's going to create stability for these coins, and it's going to create just more trusted processes for how it's used. The primary use for cryptocurrency today is for drug dealers because they like to use it because it can't really be tracked by the government. So they wouldn't want to take credit cards for this. They use Bitcoin. But I think Bitcoin and I think these cryptocurrencies and our reaction as Christians sometimes going to be like, well, that's just for drug dealers. Well, it's actually just currency. It's neutral from a technology perspective, but it's being used and abused in a negative stand. And we saw this with the internet. I remember when the internet came out, it was said that Christians shouldn't use the internet because it's all pornography. And naturally, there are terrible things that happen on the internet, but there's so much good that's available. And I can't imagine during this COVID season of what we would do without the internet and what that allows for education and connection and relationship. There's so much value. And so with blockchain technology and cryptocurrency, as regulation comes and it becomes something that we trust more and there are good boundaries for it, I think it will be a more natural way for us to begin using technology. So while there will be more cryptocurrencies, I think there'll be more regulation, which I think will bring us down to fewer cryptocurrencies that we're really using. And these are the currencies that we begin to trust as a society, and maybe that will be regional, maybe that will be global. And I think there will be different currencies for different purposes, and we'll exchange similar to how we exchange US dollars for pesos or in euros, and we have different rates, and we're already doing that, but it's just not regulated effectively yet. So I believe that's coming. The third prediction that I have is that blockchain technology will shape all sectors. So as you think about maybe a field to get into and study in college, blockchain technology is something that I'd highly encourage you to look into because this realm of being able to share across devices, that ledger system, it's going to affect healthcare. It's going to affect education. It's going to affect government systems. It's going to affect lawyers and legal contracts. Blockchain technology is just at the beginning days of how it can be used. And I think as we begin to wrap our minds around what's possible with this technology, it's going to create huge opportunities. And so as you think through what are some of the cutting edge technologies that I should think about for my future job, I think blockchain technology is probably one of the best bets you can make when it comes to technology. So what does this mean for Christians? What should a Christian do with Bitcoin? Should we get Bitcoin? Should we reject Bitcoin? Should we get Ethereum? Should we create a Jesus coin? and we have our own Christian money. There is actually a Jesus coin already created, so you can't do that. But it's hard to know of what a Christian should do. How does this affect our faith? Well, I would suggest that we not ignore it. I would suggest that we pay attention to it and see where it goes. I would suggest that we look for opportunities to use it for good, especially when it comes to the blockchain technology. But as you even think about, and I encourage you to look up Charity Water and how they've used cryptocurrency to raise money for water wells. But as we think through, there are good opportunities for this. And those that really begin to lean into the internet in early days or leaned into social media in early days, they saw such massive impact because they got creative with these technologies and used them incredibly effectively. And I think there's an opportunity in this realm to create good out of this technology because it is not inherently bad. It's actually inherently good in what it can do and the advancement that it creates, but it's being used right now for significant bad. And I think as we lead the way as Christians and we lead the way in culture, understanding that money, which is at the center of so much, it's at the center of even at the heart of where the Bible talks about with our giving in our hearts. And I think as we think about if we're giving our resources, it's likely not going to be this in the future. It's likely going to be digital. And so understanding what that looks like for us to have digital money and to use digital money for good, I think is important for all of us as we look to the future. Thanks so much for having me. It's a privilege to be with you.